Okay, my name is Kashif, and today we have to go through experiment number 5, that is about the trusses. And here we have a model. But before that, trusses, about the trusses, you know that trusses are basically structural members that supports load, and you can see trusses everywhere, like buildings and the roofs support, the bridges. They are everywhere in the structure to support the loads. And they are the most, like you can say that they are the most stable in supporting the load. The most stable structure in that is the triangular structure. So today we actually have to study a triangular truss, a simple triangular truss, and how we can find the forces in the members of the truss. A truss, as you know that a truss is usually consists of straight members that are either under tension or compression. So we call them the two force members. So here we have a simple truss, roof truss, static and dynamic. It's from against Norwood, as most of the equipment in engineering mechanics lab we have. So first of all, you have to look at this is the basic equipment we have, and to perform the experiment, we need the following things. First of all, you need a tape, some loads, the apparatus or the equipment, and the fourth one, you should have your manual to note the readings or the observations, and the most important, the pen. Okay, so first of all, what I have to do, I have to find out the forces in each member. Okay, actually the truss members are basically rigid, so there is no sort of mechanism. I can use some other method. There are methods, theoretical methods, we can calculate the forces in this one, but here we have a simple way we can find the force, approximate force in each member, where we can use springs to basically calculate the force in each member using Hooke's law. Okay, so first of all, you can see a spring here. Okay, this is a spring. One spring here. It has a spring constant of 21.4 Newton per millimeter. Here. Okay, similar one. This one has a spring constant of 20.8 Newton per millimeter, and the bottom one has a spring constant of 17.2 Newton per millimeter. As you know that this spring constant basically shows the stiffness of the spring. The higher the spring constant, the more stiff the spring is, the larger the force is required to produce the deflection. So from all of them, this one 21.4 Newton per millimeter spring has the spring constant stiffness 21.4 Newton per millimeter is the most stiff one. So this one is the comparatively loose spring of 17.2 Newton per millimeter. So all these spring constant have basically different spring constants. So you can say that. Okay, about the other one, this apparatus has these two members actually have the same length. The left one, this inclined member, and this one. So these are basically, they have equal length. So we can say that this is an isosceles triangle because two sides are the same. The third side is not exactly equal. So I can also change the length of this lower one, moving this one. Moving this and using this slot here, but I'll fix it at this point. So I'll perform the experiment in this configuration and let you know how to do that. And so if these two sides are equal, so according to triangular theorem, we can say that the angles opposite to them are also same. So these two angles formed here and here are basically the same. Okay. So first of all, if I have to perform this experiment theoretically and I have to calculate the force theoretically, I need these angles actually. So as you can observe while doing the calculations by hand, that we need these two angles or this angle to find the forces in these members. So for that, first of all, what I do, I find the length of each member. That would basically give me the three elements from the triangle. So if I have three elements from a triangle, we know that using triangle trigonometry we can find the other three members in the triangle, like the three angles and three sides. So if I know the three sides, I know the three angles as well. All three angles can be calculated if I know these three sides. Using the cosine theorem, we can do that. So first of all, I'll find the parameters to the three parameters. Okay, using this tape. So as you can see, this one is about 45 centimeter in length. This one is approximately exactly the same. And the bottom one is about 22.3 centimeter. Okay, so this one is 45 centimeter, 45 centimeter and 22.3 centimeter. I note these observations on my chart. So 21.3 centimeter. How was it? How much? Sorry, I made a mistake. I think so. Sorry. The above one is 4 inches. It's about 56.5 centimeters, means 560 millimeter. So I have these the spring constants are given here, and these three lengths are needed to find the theoretical forces. Okay, so first of all, I need now I apply the load and I have to basically find the forces in each member. What I can do is I can use the Hooke's law to find the forces in each member. So we know that Hooke's basically presented this law for the springs. He performed the experiment for the spring and gave this theorem. But later on, this is valid on other objects as well. So here, but here I have the spring here. So we know that if we apply a force on a spring and there is a deflection in the spring, that force per unit deflection is somehow they are related by a constant K that is called spring stiffness. So I'll use that theorem, as we know that the force acting on a spring is basically equal to spring constant times the deflection produced in that. So if I know I want to find out the forces in any member, if I need this F, I know the K, so I need the deflection produced in that member. So if I can, so what I will do here in this experiment, like these are the springs here, 1, 2, I can call this one K1 as in the manual K1, this is K2 and this one is K3. So I know this, the spring constant of this member. So if I apply a load here, and you know that you can note the deflection in the dial gauges. So these dial gauges actually give me the deflection or produce in these springs. This one. For every spring there is a dial gauge, so I can, using that dial gauge, I can find out the deflection in each member. This dial gauge is of 0 to 10 millimeters, so the maximum deflection I can measure is 10 millimeter. That is a sufficient value. And 1 millimeter is basically divided into 100 divisions. So it has a least count of 0.01 millimeter. That's again a sufficient value for very small deflections. I can use that. So first of all, to find out the deflection in each member, so first of all I'll set the dial gauges to 0. So as you can see that by rotating the knob or the display, I can adjust it on 0. The bottom one again 0. Okay, approximately. Okay. So by setting them 0, I can also start from the previous reading where it has, from that I just need the number of divisions the needle has moved. So where the start of the needle is, I can note that division, and from there I can actually measure the number of divisions it has moved. So I can start from anywhere. So here is a load of 5 Newton. So I can observe how many divisions the body has moved. So you have to apply the load here. And now you can observe that the dial gauges have been moved. Okay. The upper two move clockwise and the bottom one actually move anti-clockwise. So these the motion of the direction of the needle shows that the clockwise, so it means the forces in both are the same. So they are either in tension or the compression, but they are actually in. If these needles move clockwise, so there is a compression. If anti-clockwise, so there is a tension. So since these two moves clockwise, so these two members have actually, we can say that they do have the compression, and this one has moved anti-clockwise, so these are the tension. So I can note the deflection in these members. So how many divisions it moves? 10, 15 and 16. So the deflection, the deflection of the dial gauge is 16 divisions multiplied by 0.01 is the least count. So the deflection of the dial gauge is 16 multiplied by 0.01, and for the member BC, as we have noticed that here is about 13 divisions approximately. So I can write 13 multiplied by 0.01, here is the deflection, and for the bottom one it's 9 divisions, so 9 multiplied by 0.01. So these three basically gives me the. So using these, I know the deflection, so I know the values of the spring constant here, so I can actually find the force in each member. For the theoretical part, please go through the theory available in the manual and discussed in the class, so that you can get it thoroughly. And any question you can ask me about this experiment. Similarly, we have to increase the load and perform this experiment for 2 to 3 loads, and by measuring these deflections, so we can find the forces of tension or compression in these members. So I think we get it. This is about it. Okay, this is experiment number 5 in engineering mechanics lab. See you. If you have any question, please send it to me in the chat. I'll answer it as soon as possible. Thank you.